When we started our work, basically in looking at our strategy, we looked at these four main trends that I would say impact the way we eat and we will eat in the future. And besides, if I look at what has happened in the last 5 years as well, the evolution of the food business has been so fast that we haven't seen before. So these four trends anyway are, first of all, population is growing, and I'll show you some data. People live longer as well and more consciously about health. Sustainability is becoming more and more of a concern. You see what's happening even this year with the temperature changes across the world, and obviously the devastation of the climate, hurricanes and so forth. And then the digitalization, which is an important trend that is definitely shaping the way we think, we act, and how we work. So this is an interesting slide for me. It's about indeed we will grow by 2050 the population to more than 9 billion, and the share of the 60 plus is increasing exponentially, as you can see, almost exponentially now. And so this shows obviously an aging world. Then if you look at the amount of people indeed and the amount of food that we need to get, and I would like to look at basically this chart here on below. It's the size of the farmland that we will need at the current rate of utilization of land will be 2 times the size of India. So it's a lot, and it's probably not enough. We don't have enough of our planet basically to afford that. Another part is that if you look at in particular the utilization of land, it's pretty impressive to see that it's pretty impressive to see that there is basically 25% is essentially the land that we have on the planet, and out of this 79% is actually used for agriculture and 21 for urban. Now you know, of course, that the population growing, of course the city expanding, so there will be more land that is used for this for sure. But I mean, out of these 79% of the arable land is currently used for 32% by agriculture, 37% by forest, and 31% is a natural ecosystem. Now, if you think about this, and the fact that 2 times of India needs to be used to feed the world, then of course you can imagine that this 32% will grow to probably encompass more of the forests and the natural ecosystem to a dangerous level where indeed there is no more availability of free land, shall we say. But another thing is basically that I want to also highlight is that at the end of this arable land, this agricultural produce, essentially about is accounting for 1/3 of the CO2 emissions, because of course the way we farm today is using lots of fertilizers that are obviously contributing to the CO2 emission, without thinking, of course, about the other things that can impact, like for instance, so the supply chain, and of course harvesting the products is typically done now also a lot with machines. And if I look at this amount of produce from agriculture, I mean 2/3 is actually depending on livestock, and this is impressive. Another part is also to think that in the world now, about 60% of deaths worldwide, actually, and it will increase at this rate, is actually depending on the lifestyle. So these non-communicable diseases are generally diseases that are connected to indeed say cardiovascular disease, for instance, also cancer to some extent, and we have other chronic diseases, also diabetes, that all depend on the diet that we have. And clearly, in this, what's being called out is the fact that obesity is increasing in particular in the Western world, but also in emerging markets. And this lifestyle obviously creates challenges also on the health system, not only on the food system per se, by overconsumption. I didn't mention here overall, perhaps one last point, that out of this agricultural produce, I mean, 30% is generally wasted across the value chain, which is another element that is also makes us reflect. So, and the last piece that I want to mention is also about the digital among the trends that that obviously is emerging more and more in our homes, and we are becoming more and more aware of this, and clearly is about the ability now to buy online, access on demand content, also the continuous monitoring of what we do, our habits, and so the ability for companies to know more about consumers, but it's also about the health, tracking health, what's good for you, and of course in time now with also more and more the regenerative AI taking advances here in the world, it will be an opportunity to essentially provide more and more consumers with educated choices, and educate the world also on many different things, including perhaps also food. Now, clearly, the food industry is undergoing transformational change. It's all about essentially connecting to the points that I mentioned earlier, and basically I will tell you more about this technology, some of these technologies that are actually emerging, and of course the challenges that are around those. So first of all, a quick mention on Givaudan, in case you don't know, and that's the company I work for. We as a company cater for ingredients essentially for a broad range of applications. As you can see here, it's essentially all you can think about. And if in particular we talk about food, it's about savory products where we create the flavors, we create also the ingredients. There could be plant extracts, for instance, that can make colors, can provide different functional features like texture, as well as also shelf life preservation. Beverages, the same, nutraceuticals, and also we do a lot in the snacks, dairy, and sweet goods applications. So a lot of products that essentially touch everybody's lives. And I would say, since we have a pretty strong market share in the world, we probably impact the life of 1 billion people every day, and at all levels, at all classes in the world. So to tell you that our reach is very broad, and that's the beauty also of being able from my seat obviously to help humanity as well to grow. So about the trends, so linking back about the trends, the things that I could foresee here is that people are definitely looking more at nature, and this has to be done also thinking more consciously about land. So there are also other factors that play a role. The proximity of the supply is an example where people also search for local food. The ability also not to use pesticides or too much artificial. Well, shall we say that definitely there is a trend in looking more into organic, which eliminates the needs of pesticides overall, but also artificial fertilizer, and also the availability of the material, the products that produce throughout the year. Now there are some technologies emerging that they're still in the process of scaling, but an example is vertical farming, where virtually you could definitely reproduce within within a building and building on height and not on square meters or square feet, and essentially you can also control the conditions, and as a result a lot of the, in particular the spice, the herbs, and also some of the salads are actually produced through this approach, and they've been scaled in many parts of the world. Of course, it's very much linked also to the availability of cheap energy source, which is typically the case, especially if we are in warmer countries. And another technology I want to mention is plant cell culture, which is the ability to reproduce plants also on a vial. So these eventually could be scaled into a fermenter, but you know, plants essentially don't have to grow on land, and of course this could be an alternative solution as well to create a lot of the biomass just through a fermenter. This is also a technology that is emerging. We use it a lot also because of the need of very rare plants in many cases, so to eliminate the need essentially for ingredients that otherwise would be scarce in the world. To scale to very large crops, of course, that's probably very far out. But I mean, these are two examples of technologies where already some of the needs of the food and the food industry, the consumers in the food industry, could be replaced by these technologies indeed, and relegate the land to the, you know, the broader needs, the broader the commodity uses. Another part is actually fermentation. We've been using fermentation for a long time. I mean, of course, you can imagine in Asia a lot of the sauces that are used as a condiment, like for instance soy sauce or fish sauce, and of course wine, and many of the pickles and cheese are all derived from fermentation, used throughout the history, basically to preserve food. And now probably the new approach going forward is how can we actually generate a lot of the ingredients that are very important for our nutrition, but also as overall food for the industry, instead of using land essentially. And they grow, typically we can produce those through definitely these fermenters here that you see in the picture. So an example of some of the things that we've done at Givaudan was, for instance, two ingredients. One is nucketon, one called bio-nucketon, and one bio-vanillin. So if you think about vanillin, is probably one of the best light flavor in the world, and it's produced. Vanilla beans are produced for most part in the world, actually Madagascar. Of course, we have small quantities also coming from other countries, but it's subject to a lot of fluctuation due to supply. Also, if there is climate challenges also affecting Madagascar, definitely this affects the supply and the cost of this raw material. So one way you actually eliminate the supply shift is definitely by producing through fermentation. And so we have actually developed a system through essentially a bacteria that is actually capable to convert sugar into vanillin. And this is a fantastic process that only uses a little bit of sugar, so very little land impact. But then obviously we can be up to even 50 to 70% better from a CO2 emission point of view compared to land use, because also vanillin is not very much available in a vanilla bean. It's very, very little quantities. Essentially, we need a lot of vanilla beans to get this material. Another one is very interesting as well, is an emerging space, is actually the nucketon. Nucketon is a very key signature ingredient in grapefruit. If you think about grapefruit being a species that is endangered, there is a pest in particular that has hit very badly the Florida and in general the US, where a lot of the production was done. And this is probably going to spread even more. I mean, we have, of course, cases also in other parts of the world, Brazil, China, and it's not curable. So to avoid then the challenges of having to to rely on actual land, but also on these challenges of availability and supply of this raw material, we've actually created an ingredient through biofermentation, again using sugar to ferment it with the bacteria that actually allow us to have sufficient quantities to continue the business on nucatone and nucatone on grapefruit. And grapefruit flavors, are very common and popular in many different applications, but in particular in beverages. So another space that you've obviously seen a lot emerging is plant-based products that to some extent probably these are more products common in many parts of the Western world, and in particular in the US, where it has emerged very strongly, and then also we see a lot going also in Europe and in many parts of Asia. And these are products basically that try to meet with or dairy, or many, let's say, animal-derived ingredients. So with the expectation, of course, to convert many of the people that are so-called flexitarians, so people that are easy as switching from meat to non-meat or let's say non-animal. And this in this case, really, it's very important. It has been very important to match the taste, and of course, a lot of the driver for consumers here is really to have the right taste here. And if, for instance, in Givaudan, we've done a lot of work, for instance, in providing many of the alternative dairy, the flavor of dairy. And this is an interesting challenge here because it's about fermenting a lot of ingredients to reproduce exactly the whole process that typically the lactobacillus will do when they are in a dairy matrix. We also have an interesting developed also recently an interesting technology that actually allows to mimic a lot of the fat particles, they're typically found in ground meat, but not only. You find, of course, the fat much more structured in meat overall as filaments of tissue. And anyway, the ability to actually mimic this fat allows for an enhanced consumer impact in these products. And also we realized along the way that we even can decrease 70% of the fat used in these matrices. Another technology that's very new that obviously made a lot of the news in Singapore when Singapore opened up to this is a culture meat and in general cultural cellular agriculture, which provides basically ways to reproduce in the lab a lot of the different tissue parts of the animal without using the animal at all. Now US also opened up, and there is a lot more news when it comes to Europe also, and also in Switzerland, where some of the companies are also trying to expand this product range. It's a promising technology. Of course, it requires still some work to do also in terms of scaling, but it's obviously promising to again reproduce the whole animal, ideally giving the seamless sensorial experience as meat. And here started with two companies here, Migros and Bühler, a journey also where we set up a scale-up facility essentially to accelerate the journey of many of these startups into this world. So essentially we take material from the lab and we scale it to larger quantities so that these startups can easily test and promote the products, as well as going through the regulatory process. So a very exciting technology that obviously we are pioneering here in Switzerland from this standpoint, and look forward obviously to see more coming in the future. Another part that I want to mention linked to the trends is also nutrition. So as you all know, consumers also not only look at natural choices as we talked about earlier, but also healthy choices. In many cases, this this natural becomes a bit like almost a proxy for consumers of nutrition. Nevertheless, not all natural products are nutrition. They need to be formulated. So in other words, they need to be combined with the healthy diet. Let's say it's more than just natural ingredients. It has to be balancing out a number of different ingredients, of course, to be healthy for consumers. There are elements of let's say the world where that are definitely in when it comes to the food industry is about for the most part, for the last 10 years, it's been about removing the bodies, as we say. So too much sugar, too much salt, too much fat. They've been definitely, one of the focus areas where the food industry has really spent a lot of effort, and also triggered by, the changes in regulation around the world, with many countries they've adopting the sugar tax as an example, and perhaps also warnings, labels when indeed these products are too unhealthy. And we are talking definitely about the beverage business, but the other areas, of course, that are considered here is also snacks, where a lot of salt is also used. So we've been developing a lot of solutions for this, and as you can imagine, it's not an easy game. It's about replacing sugar and salt and fat that are generally commodities. They're very cheap, and they've been established for a long time, as excellent tools, also for not only give taste, but also give preservation, for giving also texture. So in our program, we continue to work on identifying ingredients that essentially play with our receptors, and make sure that we deliver the same perception, and at the same time with less sugar and salt and fat available. And we have a lot, but of course we continue the work, also expanding into new categories and new ingredients that are used for the food industry today. Another part is also to add the goodies. Nutri-Score is an example of an approach that has been used, for instance, in Europe, where the food product is categorized according to this score system, rating system, and A is the best and E is the worst. It's a debatable system, but of course it's used by many companies today. And clearly the ambition of many companies is to have their products connected to a high score, so A. And with that, then is the ability to add vitamins, to add fibers, all things that also we've been working on as a way to improve definitely the nutritional quality of the food products today. And one thing not to forget is that we have fibers are very important, as well as probiotics. The microbiome is a part of our body. We actually have, can you imagine that 57% of cells in our body are actually foreign cells. They live in our guts, and they are responsible for the most part of all these non-communicable diseases. They are responsible to, prevention of good elements to go into your body, because they digest the food, and they are responsible for immune response also, and they also connected to the brain. So in other words, they can also in time impact your brain. And so typical diseases like dementia, as an example, conditions like dementia can be definitely triggered by a bad nutrition connected to the microbiome. And we have also fibers that are very much targeting the good microbiome, so to have the right population of let's say bacteria in our guts, and this is the beta glucan. Last but not least, I want to also mention the trends of personalized nutrition. This will come more and more as definitely as an evolving area. There are some startups that play in this space, and more also large companies entering this space. It's definitely about supplements today. It's about you know, the way you essentially monitor your body and how it functions, but also understand your how you're made. So some of these startups focus, for instance, on DNA and trying to understand your likelihood to actually get some of the non-communicable diseases, like for instance diabetes. And as a result, you can early enough actually take measures with your diet, for instance, to prevent that. Another one is also the gut microbiome, and as mentioned earlier, by understanding your gut microbiome, so they actually measure your gut microbiome, and they are able actually to prescribe the right diet. They will actually create the right, they will develop the right microbiota in your system, so to indeed prevent any of the non-communicable diseases. Again, this is a whole area that is further evolving. There is more science that we need to definitely get, but definitely exciting to understand where it goes and how we can essentially you know, prevent diseases through food. So finally, some conclusions. You know, there are lots of challenges, as mentioned before and at the beginning, and also definitely lots of opportunities. And food and nutrition play a fundamental role in this space to really think about resolving many of these challenges here. And innovation is definitely catching up here, because we see the industry evolving with many new technologies coming up, and also old ones that are, let's say, revisited in a more modern key. So scaling these technologies and you know, focusing, you know, regulatory, I would say, because regulatory can be definitely slowing down a lot of these adoption of technologies. In many cases, for the right reason, of course, because we need to be sure that they are definitely non-toxic for humans. But in other words, I would say that you know, scaling these new technologies by helping the industry certainly, and by helping the value chain to be created is important, and definitely will provide solutions for all these challenges mentioned before. And last but not least, I will say, whatever direction we go, finally the consumers are the king, because they buy, they eat, and their choices need to really meet their needs. But of course, we also need to educate consumers to make the right choices. And that's and I hope that through, you know, a number of technologies and let's say businesses that are emerging, I could at least give you a sense of some of the areas and solutions that, of course, the whole food industry could look at in the future. Thank you very much.